What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the trailer breakdown for Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Now, if you haven't already watched the CGI trailer that just dropped today, go over, make sure you do that, and then come right back here, because I am joined with Ashraf Ismail, creative director on Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and Darby McDevitt, narrative director on Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
It's a pleasure. Yeah, it's a pleasure.
So we're going to go through this trailer here and sort of break down some parts, pause and play, and hopefully y'all could shed a little bit more light on some things for us. So why don't we go ahead and start it?
They are heartless.
So right off the bat, I do want to stop this here. And Ashraf, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about this settlement we're seeing, because I know settlements play a big role in Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
Yes, here what we're seeing is it's a settlement in Norway, a Norwegian settlement. The idea of home and settling, it's very important to Assassin's Creed Valhalla. A big part of the motivation of the story and the journey of Eivor, our hero, is about this idea of home and having this thriving settlement. What we're seeing here, again, is in Norway. This is home in Norway.
Yeah, so let's keep going here, because I don't think they're staying in Norway for long. So, Darby, we see this giant statue here. Who is this exactly?
This is a statue of Odin, one of the many gods in the Norse pantheon. It was pretty common before big events, before battle, before feasts, for the Norse to give offerings to the gods, sacrifices, in exchange for favors. This was not a religion that had where there was like an interventionist aspect where the gods were always watching over you, protecting you. They were a little bit more like humans. You had to do something for them and they would do something for you. So this is what we're seeing here, is kind of a something's about to happen and they're sort of going and asking for favors.
Godless barbarians.
So we see there the first sort of shot of our hero, Eivor. What's happening here? Why are they getting their face covered?
So here, as Darby mentioned, we have a ritual because we're about to go out. We're about to go to raid, to attack. And so here we're getting sort of the favor of Odin. There's been a sacrifice made to Odin to gain this war god's favor.
And is there anything you can sort of tell us about Eivor?
Yeah, Eivor. Our hero, this is a Viking raider who is from Norway and who will be leaving Norway for the rolling green hills of England. Here we're sort of teasing the idea that the journey really starts in Norway, and it will eventually lead to England, where, again, it's about this idea of settling the people and building this thriving settlement. Again, very important to the motivation of this character. Now, players will be able to play Eivor as male or female, but it is the journey of Eivor.
So we see them here setting sail for England, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And kill blindly.
So I want to stop right there for a second too, because we hear the voiceover saying they murder and kill blindly, but then you see them clearly stopping when they see this woman and child in front of them. Was that something you wanted to there's that maybe myth of the Vikings? Is that something you wanted to explore here, Darby?
Yeah, well, I mean, certainly, a lot of what we know about the Vikings comes from the people who they raided. The Viking Age started at the end of the 8th century with an attack on Lindisfarne in England. And the English like to write about it, and certainly a lot of the accounts are very brutal. what we're trying to do is actually show the complete sort of story of an entire culture. And when you actually jump forward to when our game is set, there's a lot of settling going on. There's not just raiding, but there's Norse coming over from Norway, from Denmark, and settling in England. And our game depicts a lot of that aspect of settling and integrating with the population. So, and that integration actually happened fairly quickly and easily. So we know that there was a lot of mutual, a lot of similarities between the two cultures that allowed this to happen. So what we're going to portray in this game is that it's not just about brutality and violence and wanton masochism. There's a lot of thought that goes into these raids, these battles, and then where these Norse settle, and the friends they make and the alliances they make. So we try to show a complete picture.
Yeah, and you referenced the time period there. What time period are we talking?
So this game takes place. The main story begins in 873 AD. So at a time when England is actually not one kingdom. It's not called England at the time, except as a land, but it's not a country. There's actually quite a few kingdoms inside England. So England itself is fairly fractured at this time, with many different kings that rule over different parts of it.
Yeah, I think we might see one of those kings in just a second.
They scour the lands of England. Lands they will never defend.
What we're showing here is that they've left Norway and they've decided to now not just raid and attack England, but to actually build a community there. And as Darby mentioned, integrate themselves into the local society and become a part of it. One thing that history doesn't really say until you dig, which is a lot of these people were farmers, they were traders, settlers, and they actually worked quite hard to integrate themselves into, let's say, England in this example. So here we're showing off this aspect of them, but from a game perspective, this is also something that's very important to the motivation of the game. Building your settlement, growing it, making the choices as a leader within this community about how you want to grow your settlement. This is very important. And here we're kind of giving a little taste of that.
Yeah, one thing that I think the English, or let's say the Saxons, you'd call them at the time when they were living there, they had because of the church, they had a lot of writing, so they were able to leave behind a lot of records. But so archaeologically, we have to actually go and look at other sources to see how well they actually integrated. And if you look at a map of England now and you see any town with the ending of Thorpe or by, B, that's probably means it was a Viking town or a Norse or Dane town settled. So we know just by the sheer number of them, hundreds of these towns, we know that they were actually very successful settlers.
Never love. The time has come to speak.
All right, so I think this is one of those kings that Darby, you were mentioning. Who exactly is this? And it's sort of revealed here that this is also the person that's giving voiceover as well. Why does he seem to have such disdain towards the Vikings?
Yeah, so this is Alfred, King Alfred, or Alfred the Great. He's the only English king to actually have that title. He didn't give it to himself. But he is the King of Wessex, which is the southernmost kingdom in England at the time. There's also three others: Mercia, Northumbria, and East Anglia that we deal with. And he specifically is known for being one of the most staunch opponents of the Viking invasion. He was the strongest of the kings. He was able to push them back and for a time and deal with them, whereas other kings would rapidly crumble beneath the onslaught of the Danes and the Norse.
To them, in a language they will understand.
So, Ash, here we see Eivor's people coming in on these Viking longships. How do those factor into the gameplay, and what did you learn about them?
Yeah, so the Viking longships, this is a technology that was unique to the Norse and the Danes and the Vikings in this time period. If I was to give a metaphor, I would say, imagine that you have this empty highway, rivers, and you have a Ferrari that you can drive down this highway with no one around you and no one able to chase you. This is what gave the Vikings the capacity to get in so deep into the land behind enemy lines to hit and run. And these ships carried usually cargo and raiders. So raiders, these are warriors that were proficient in combat. They were able to get in, steal a lot of stuff, and run away.
Yeah, I think we're going to see the events of that play out here in a little bit. So we're seeing here like a full-on battle taking place in this field. How do raids sort of fit into gameplay, and what did you what did you learn about how Vikings raid once they've gotten out of their longships?
Well, there's really two parts. There's raiding, which is much more about kind of hit and run, get into a specific place, steal the riches, create a bit of chaos to make people flee, run away, to give them time to steal. That's a raid. Here, what we're seeing is it's a big battle. So this time period was known to have a lot of battles between the Vikings and the Saxons, or the people who live in England. There were many battles. Here we're witnessing that, and that is something that we do have in the game. So players can go raiding with their longship and the raiders, and there are moments in the game with these really big epic scale battles on battlefields or in fortifications, because it was a really big part of the history during this time. So we needed to represent that. Of course, Vikings carrying their famous round shield. We have Eivor, who at some point is holding a shield and an axe, but also two axes. If people notice, we're seeing a lot of the things we're doing with combat. Here we have a throwing axe, which is an ability that you have in the game to throw axes. So we're showing off a lot of the combat details that we're pushing for.
Yeah, and we actually caught a little peek there of Eivor dual-wielding axes here. Is that something we're going to get to do?
Oh, of course, absolutely. So dual-wielding is a big part of the game, and it's very open. You can pretty much dual-wield all combinations of weapons we have. If you want to dual-wield two shields, we let you do that.
Yes.
So dual wielding is a big part of the combat system.
So we get like a little tease here. There's some hooded figure that appears to be standing next to this tree on the battlefield. Anything at all, Ash, you could tell us about this figure here?
Here, Eivor believes that he is receiving some kind of favor, and it gives him the sort of, let's say, the will to push forward.
Odin is with us!
So is that the sort of physical manifestation of Odin there?
Well, in the myths, Odin has two ravens, Hugin and Munin, which are a thought and memory. They come from the words thought and memory, and they were just his two companions that would help him gather knowledge and wisdom about the world.
So we see Eivor here getting just about, all they can handle. Are we gonna see enemies of this stature, that are this formidable in the game?
Yeah, we have. The combat of this time period. If you're going to make a Viking game, the combat needs to be visceral. It needs to be quite brutal. Yes, you meet quite impressive enemies, like this guy here. We would call this guy the ringleader. So this is sort of a leader on the battlefield who's able to rally the troops and have some kind of unique capacities. He's very armored, very few available weak points. So that's a little hint as to what's to come.
Yeah, I mean, the trailer shows that, he's given Ivor basically everything they can handle. Okay, so this is the coolest thing in the world. There's so much I want to talk about. First of all, the Hidden Blade. The Hidden Blade is back. What was the decision around that? And then it's also mounted on top of the arm for the first time. Where did all those decisions come from?
You go first.
Let's see here. I'll go first. Okay. We're building a Viking fantasy. We wanted our players to live in the boots of a Viking warrior and to fully live in that fantasy. But this is within the Assassin's Creed world. In our journey, of course, we can't spoil too much here. But in our journey, Eivor does meet with assassins. Now, Eivor doesn't necessarily know what that means, but there is some kind of common ground that they have, and this is something that these are people that Eivor will work with. And at some point, Eivor does receive a hidden blade. So that's something that happens in the journey quite early on. Again, we don't want to get into any spoiler territory or explain why the connection is there, but it is something that's very significant and important to the journey of this game. And so when Eivor receives this hidden blade, Eivor puts it on and believes that this is such a kick-ass weapon that why would you want to hide it from your enemies? So here again, we wanted to show that Eivor, there's something more to this character than yes, this is a Viking raider, but there is more. There is something unique here. There's a unique journey that our players will go on within this Viking fantasy inside the Assassin's Creed world.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time overlapping and intertwining threads to make sure that every moment of it really feels connected, integrated. That it's all, when you play this game, you're in not just a Viking game, but an Assassin's Creed game.
All right. Well, folks, there you have it. That's the first trailer for Assassin's Creed Valhalla. You got the in-depth breakdown. You got all the details with Ashraf, the creative director, Darby, the narrative director. Thank you all so much for joining us. And Ash, when and where can people play Assassin's Creed Valhalla?
So Assassin's Creed Valhalla will be a launch title for Xbox Series X and PS5. And it'll be out in holiday 2020 for Xbox One, PS4, PC, and Stadia.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Take care, everyone.
Thank
you.
If
you liked this, please subscribe to this channel and visit us at news.ubisoft.com.